My brother-in-law borrowed $10,000 from me but refused to pay it back, and my wife took his side. So what I did next cost them dearly. I'm a 36-year-old man, and I've been married to my wife Claire for 9 years. We live in a quiet suburb not far from the city. I work as a mechanical engineer. I'm not flashy, not the loudest in the room, but I'm someone who shows up. I don't drink much, I don't go out often, and I don't expect much from anyone except honesty and respect. Maybe that sounds a bit old school, but that's who I am. Claire knew that when she married me. Her family's always been different, loud, close-knit, opinionated. They spend every birthday, holiday, and random Sunday together. At first I thought it was nice, seeing how close everyone was. It felt like something out of a sitcom, laughs, hugs, inside jokes. But the more time I spent around them, the more I started noticing things that didn't sit right with me, especially when it came to her younger brother, Andrew. Andrew is 31, extremely outgoing, the kind of guy who calls himself a visionary but has had a dozen jobs and no real career. He's the kind of person who walks into a room like he's starring in a movie. Everyone lights up when he arrives, but when he leaves, it's usually with something that isn't his. That's not a metaphor. He's literally walked off with my tools, borrowed my Bluetooth speakers, and once even forgot he was staying over for a week. The first time he showed up uninvited, Claire brushed it off, said he needed space from his roommates and just wanted to chill for a bit. I let it slide. Then it happened again and again. He'd make himself at home, leave dishes in the sink, take calls on speakerphone. One time, he used my personal laptop without asking and changed my desktop wallpaper to a selfie of himself. I didn't even know how to respond to that. Claire always laughed it off, called him a free spirit. I didn't laugh, but I didn't fight either. I just kept letting it happen. 2 years ago, things escalated. Andrew came to us with a business idea. He wanted to start a home renovation company, said he had the branding, the plan, and the passion. All he needed was the capital, $10,000. He pitched it like he was on a game show. Claire was already nodding before he finished. I asked questions, basic stuff, timeline, expenses, marketing strategy. He had half answers and charm. Claire pulled me aside later and said this could bring her family even closer, that it meant a lot to her. Against my better judgment, I said yes, but I drafted a contract first. Nothing fancy, just a written agreement with repayment terms, $500 a month, starting 3 months after the loan. I printed 2 copies and had him sign both. He rolled his eyes but signed. That was the last time the loan was mentioned from his side. Month after month, nothing. No payments, no explanations. I waited, hoping maybe he'd bring it up himself. He didn't. After 6 months, I asked Claire what was going on. She looked uncomfortable, said he was going through a rough patch and it wasn't the right time to push. I waited another 3 months. Still nothing. Then came the tipping point. I was scrolling through social media last month and saw photos of Andrew on a ski trip in Colorado, new gear, fancy lodge, drinks by a fire pit. One photo had him holding up a cocktail with the caption, "Working hard or hardly working." That alone stung, but the part that actually made me freeze, Claire had liked the post. That same week, I found out he bought a custom-built gaming PC worth at least $3,000. I confirmed it with a mutual friend who helped him set it up. Meanwhile, I was cutting back on my own spending, thinking maybe he was scraping by, and I didn't want to kick a man while he was down. So I decided enough was enough. The next weekend, we had a family dinner at Claire's parents' house. Everyone was there. We were halfway through the meal when I calmly turned to Andrew and asked when he planned to start making repayments. He looked up from his plate like I had thrown a drink in his face. For a second, he just blinked. Then he started raising his voice, called me greedy, said I was trying to embarrass him in front of the family. The room went dead silent. Claire didn't say a word, her eyes down. Her parents looked shocked, then defensive. Her dad said I should have talked to Andrew privately. Her mom said money shouldn't come between family. I reminded them it wasn't just money, it was an agreement. Andrew stormed out. Claire stayed seated. That night when we got home, I told Claire that unless Andrew contacted me within the week to discuss a payment plan, I was going to take legal action. I wasn't bluffing. I had the signed contract, bank transfers, everything. Claire didn't yell. She just said, "You're choosing money over family," and left to stay at her parents' place. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I've heard nothing from Andrew, but I did check his social media again. He posted another photo from that ski trip. Same smirk, new caption, "Haters gonna hate." Claire liked that one too. 3 days after she left, Claire came back home without warning. I was in the garage working on the car when I heard the front door open. She stood in the hallway with a small overnight bag and said she wanted to talk. I put the wrench down, wiped my hands, and followed her inside. For a second, I thought maybe this would be the moment she told me she understood where I was coming from, but that wasn't what she came for. She sat at the kitchen table and said I needed to apologize, not to her, to Andrew. According to her, bringing up the loan at dinner had publicly humiliated him, and it wasn't fair to corner him like that in front of their parents. I stood across from her and didn't raise my voice. I told her I wouldn't be apologizing for expecting someone to follow through on an agreement they signed. $10,000 isn't pocket change. If Andrew wanted respect, he should have acted with some. She didn't argue right away. Instead, she looked down at the table and went quiet. Then she admitted something I didn't expect. She told me she'd been having doubts for a while now about Andrew ever paying me back. She said she didn't tell me because she didn't want to start a fight. She was hoping he'd surprise us and do the right thing eventually. I asked why she'd let me go through with the loan, knowing full well this was likely going to happen. She didn't deny it. She said it was about keeping peace in the family, that if I had said no, it would have caused tension, and she just wanted everyone to stay close. I told her things were going to change, starting now. I said Andrew was no longer welcome in our house unless we both agreed beforehand. No more surprise visits, no more sleepovers, no more walking in like it's his place. She pushed back immediately, said I was being controlling, that Andrew was still her brother and would always be part of her life. I said that's fine, but not in our home without boundaries. She stormed off and locked herself in the bedroom. That night, I contacted a lawyer. I explained the loan, the written agreement, the timeline, and the complete lack of payment. The lawyer said I had a solid case. Since it was under the small claims limit, filing would be straightforward. I didn't need Claire's approval or involvement. The next morning, I told Claire about the legal step I was going to take. I was matter of fact. She didn't react at first. She just stared at me like she didn't recognize who I was. Then she started yelling, accused me of bringing lawyers into something that should have stayed private, said I was tearing her family apart over a bit of money, and that I was the one turning this into a war. By that evening, she had packed a full duffel bag and her laptop and said she couldn't stay in a house where family is treated like enemies. She left and drove back to her parents' house. I didn't stop her. The next day, before I blocked him, Andrew sent one last text message. Guess I got the house now, huh? That was the last straw. I blocked his number, email, and every social media account I could find. He doesn't get access to me anymore. Not a text, not a call, not even a comment under a photo. Digital blackout. Claire didn't respond to any of my messages. I called twice, left one voicemail, no answer. I sent her a short message, just asking when she planned to come back and whether we could talk. Nothing. Instead, I got a text from her father. It was just one sentence: "I'm disappointed, and I hope you find it in you to be the bigger man." I filed the court case the same day. I sent the paperwork to Andrew's registered address through certified mail, signature required. I also scanned a copy and emailed it to the address he used to sign the agreement. I made sure he'd know it was real. Later that night, I logged into our joint savings account. Claire and I had opened it 3 years ago to keep our emergency funds in one place. It wasn't something we used for daily expenses, but Claire and I both had access, and I hadn't checked the transaction history in months. That's when I noticed the withdrawal. 2 weeks ago, before the family dinner, someone had transferred $4,000 out of the account. The note attached to the transaction read, "Andrew Startup Support." I sat there staring at the screen. I hadn't authorized any transfer. Claire had access, and we never had any conversation about that money. That meant she had given him even more behind my back, without telling me, from our shared emergency fund. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I just took screenshots of the transaction and scheduled an appointment with my bank. I was going to remove her access and move the remaining balance into an account with only my name on it. Claire had drawn her line, so I drew mine. The morning after I saw the $4,000 withdrawal, I called Claire. She didn't answer the first time, but called back 5 minutes later. I asked her straight up why she pulled money from our shared account without telling me. She didn't deny it, said she was helping family, that it was her money too, and she had every right to use it. I reminded her that the joint savings was set aside for our home renovation next spring. We had spent months planning for it: kitchen, roof, insulation. She said none of that mattered if our family wasn't intact. She ended the call by saying she didn't need my permission to support her brother. I drove to the bank that same day. I sat down with the branch manager, explained the situation, and requested a freeze on the account. Within the hour, all remaining funds were moved to a new account under my name only. Claire wouldn't be able to access another cent without my knowledge. Later that evening, my phone rang again. It was Claire. This time, she didn't start calm. She was shouting, accusing me of being financially abusive. She said I was punishing her and acting like a dictator. I stayed calm and told her trust doesn't work one way. If she could move thousands without telling me, I could move the rest to protect what was left. She hung up. 10 minutes later, she sent a text saying she needed time to think. I didn't reply. 2 days later, an email landed in my inbox. It was from Andrew. The subject line said, legal joke. He went on about how he had spoken to someone who knows the law and said I had no case because the money was a gift. He claimed the agreement wasn't real, that I was twisting the truth, and ended the message saying he would fight this tooth and nail. I forwarded the entire email to my lawyer. The response came within an hour. Good. That email just made your case stronger. The same afternoon, Claire messaged me again. This time, she said she had hired her own lawyer to protect herself. She didn't say what she needed protection from. I hadn't threatened her, hadn't made any moves against her. I hadn't even brought her name into the legal case with Andrew. But apparently, that didn't matter. She wanted legal counsel. She proposed we meet for dinner, neutral ground, no yelling, just a conversation. I agreed. We picked a small place not far from our house, somewhere quiet with booths in the back. I arrived 5 minutes early. She was already there, sitting at a table with a glass of water and tissues by her plate. She didn't wait long before the tears started, said I had changed, said I wasn't the man she married, that I was acting cold, harsh, like someone she didn't know. I listened. I didn't interrupt. When she finished, I told her the truth. She had changed too, into someone who stood by her brother while he took advantage of both of us, into someone who lied about money and then justified it like it was nothing. The conversation didn't last long after that. She looked across the table and said, if she had to choose between me and Andrew, she was going to choose Andrew. He was her blood. She repeated it. Like that made it okay. I didn't argue. I just signaled the waiter, paid the bill, and walked out. Back in the car, I didn't drive anywhere. I just sat there outside the restaurant, watching people walk by like nothing had happened. My wife had just picked her brother over our marriage, and I knew right then this wasn't just a fight over money or family loyalty. It was something bigger, something that had probably been building for a long time without me seeing it. I got home and took a long look around the house. It still had her coat by the door, her coffee mug on the counter, the charger she always used next to the couch. But now, it all felt like leftovers from a life I wasn't sure existed anymore. The next morning, I had the locks changed, not as a punishment, as a precaution. Claire still had a key, and she had already moved money without asking. I didn't want to take any chances. I left her a message through her lawyer's contact email, letting them know the house was now secured and asking for a time when she could collect her remaining belongings. I haven't heard back yet, but I'm sure something else is coming because people like Andrew don't just fade quietly, and people like Claire don't back down when their version of reality starts to break. And if this was their opening move, I had a feeling the next part would be even worse. My lawyer asked me a simple question. Did I have anything proving the money I gave Andrew was a loan and not a gift? I remembered the agreement Andrew signed, 2 copies, both with our signatures and dates. I'd filed it away over a year ago and hadn't touched that drawer since. I spent most of the evening going through the storage cabinet in the home office, old tax files, receipts, instruction manuals for appliances we no longer owned. It took a while. Toward the back, behind a stack of insurance forms, I found the folder I used for wedding paperwork. Inside was the loan agreement, exactly how I remembered it, typed, signed, dated. But there was something else in there too, another folder tucked inside the first one. It had Claire's handwriting on the cover, labeled with Andrew's initials. I opened it. There were printouts of Venmo transactions, small amounts, $200 here, $300 there, some as old as 18 months back. The descriptions were vague: groceries, bills, rent, all transfers from our joint account. Every single one was authorized by Claire. I hadn't seen any of them when they happened. Near the bottom of the stack were printed emails between Claire and Andrew, some casual, some blunt. One stood out. In it, Andrew asked how soon she could send another bridge payment because he had to keep up the broke act a little longer. Her reply said, "He's still being cautious, but I think he's close to caving. Just hang on." I sat at the dining table with the folder open for at least 2 hours. No TV, no phone, just me reading the same lines over and over again. These weren't mistakes or misunderstandings. This was a plan, thought out, coordinated, and kept from me on purpose. The next morning, I called my lawyer and scanned every document. I sent over the entire file, the signed loan, the Venmo printouts, the emails. The response came fast. This wasn't just proof of the loan, it was evidence of deliberate financial manipulation, potential fraud. We needed to act quickly before either of them touched another cent. I called Claire. She picked up after 3 rings. I told her what I found. She didn't argue, didn't ask how I got it. She just went quiet. After a long pause, she said, "You were never supposed to see those." I didn't raise my voice. I asked if she ever respected me at all, if our marriage was ever real, or if she was always just shielding her brother from the consequences of his choices. She didn't flinch. She said I had always been too rigid, that Andrew needed flexibility that I could afford to give. I told her this wasn't about money anymore. It was about trust, about lying over and over and acting like I was the problem for noticing. I said from now on, we were done sharing finances. I wanted the house title split or sold, no more joint anything. She pushed back instantly, said she wasn't giving up her share, claimed she had sacrificed too much in the marriage to be cut out of the property she helped maintain. That afternoon, I went straight back to my lawyer. We filed an emergency motion that same day to freeze access to our joint assets, house equity, savings, insurance, and anything else she could try to dip into next. The court issued a temporary hold while we sorted things out. 2 days later, a letter arrived in my mailbox, no return address. Inside was a handwritten note from Andrew. It read, "You're ripping this family apart for the sake of a spreadsheet. Hope it was worth it. No threats, nothing actionable, just that." I scanned it, added it to the growing folder of documentation. I wasn't playing defense anymore. I made a list of everything: receipts, account statements, email logs, screenshots, chat backups. I checked every shared subscription, canceled all Keo managed services, changed every password tied to anything Claire ever had access to, utilities, insurance, even the online grocery service. The next morning, I called my contractor and told him to postpone our house renovations indefinitely. We wouldn't be starting the kitchen remodel anytime soon, not with everything up in the air. He asked if something happened. I just said, plans changed. By the end of the week, I had a full timeline documented: when the loan was made, when the hidden payments started, when Claire and Andrew started coordinating, every discovery, every message, every legal step. If things got worse, and I had no doubt they would, I wasn't going to be caught unprepared. Because this wasn't just a messy family conflict anymore, it was something calculated, covered up, and dragged out by 2 people who knew exactly what they were doing. A mutual friend of mine and Claire's reached out midweek. He works remotely from a cafe not far from our neighborhood, and said he had seen Claire and Andrew there 2 days in a row. He didn't want to stir anything, but the way they were talking, low voices, tense body language, it caught his attention. He described it as a heated meeting, not casual sibling time. I sent Claire a message, asking if she was back in the area. Her reply was vague, just sorting out personal things. No mention of the cafe, no mention of Andrew, nothing direct. That evening, I went to the cafe myself. I didn't expect to find them there, but I wanted to confirm the story. I ordered a coffee and casually asked the barista if 2 people, tall guy, sharp voice, mid-30s, woman with auburn hair, had been meeting there recently. The barista recognized them right away. Said they'd been coming in every few days for weeks, always at the same corner table, always whispering. That meant the coordination between them hadn't stopped when Claire left. It had likely never stopped at all, even before she moved out, even during the fake apology attempts and dramatic dinner. She and Andrew had still been working together behind my back. 2 days later, a neighbor called me while I was at work. She saw Andrew on my property, walking around the backyard and peering into the windows. She said he didn't knock or leave a note, just stood around for a while and left. She thought maybe he was looking for Claire, but it didn't sit right with her. I got home and checked the security camera footage. Andrew had come onto the property at 3:47 in the afternoon. He walked down the side of the house, stepped into the backyard, circled once, and paused at the back door. He didn't try the handle, but he did lean in close and cup his hands around his face to look inside. I filed a non-emergency police report that night and submitted the footage. The officer reviewed the video and confirmed it counted as trespassing. Since he hadn't entered the house, it wouldn't lead to an arrest, but it would be logged. They advised installing motion-activated lights and to report if it happened again. I sent Claire a message, telling her what had happened. Her reply, he was probably just confused. I sent her the footage. She never responded. The next day, I contacted a divorce lawyer and started the paperwork. I explained everything: loan documents, property concerns, unauthorized withdrawals, coordinated deception. The lawyer said we had a strong case for asset protection and advised documenting every interaction going forward. That same evening, Claire sent me an email. It was long, full of emotion. She accused me of erasing 10 years of marriage over a misunderstanding, said divorce was extreme and unfair, claimed I was throwing away something we had built just because her brother wasn't perfect. I replied with one line, "Theft and deception are not misunderstandings, they are choices." The next morning, I found another handwritten note in my mailbox. No envelope, just folded paper. Inside was Andrew's handwriting again. It read, "You ruined her. I hope it was worth it." No signature, just that. I took a photo of the note, filed a harassment update with the police, and went to the hardware store. By sundown, the mailbox had a lock installed. Claire showed up at the house the following Saturday without warning. I was in the driveway washing the car when I saw her get out of a rideshare and walk up. She asked to come inside to talk like adults. I told her we'd talk, but she wasn't coming in. I kept the conversation on the front porch. She stood with her arms crossed, sunglasses still on. She said if I didn't drop the legal case against Andrew, then she and I were officially over. That was her exact wording, a transaction, like I was supposed to weigh the two and pick. I answered without waiting, then I guess we're officially over. She didn't cry, didn't argue, just turned around and walked back to the street. A few minutes later, I watched her rideshare pull away from the curb. The paperwork is already in motion. I've submitted the full file to my divorce attorney, bank transfers, emails, court documents, security footage, witness statements. It's all there, every single thing. Whatever story Claire and Andrew were trying to build, they'll have to explain it without me. The court date arrived early on a Tuesday morning. Small claims court wasn't flashy, just a basic courtroom with worn benches, humming fluorescent lights, and a clerk who called names without looking up. My lawyer and I arrived 15 minutes early, organized and ready. I had a binder with every piece of evidence, the signed loan agreement, bank statements, emails, and receipts. We waited in silence. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Just as the judge was about to call the case without him, Andrew walked in. No lawyer, just a wrinkled button-down shirt, a notebook, and the same smug look he'd worn in every family photo I now regret being in. But he wasn't alone. Claire followed him into the room. She looked stiff, hands clenched around her bag strap. She walked right past me and sat beside Andrew. My lawyer leaned over and whispered, "We expected a neutral statement from her, not this." When the case began, the judge asked each party to confirm their identity. I gave mine. Andrew gave his. Then Claire stood up and said, despite her lawyer's advice, she wanted to offer a statement on behalf of her brother. She said the money was never meant to be repaid, that we'd always discussed it as a gift to help Andrew get back on his feet. She claimed the signed agreement was something I pressured Andrew into during a family emergency, calling it emotional duress. She even implied I had manipulated both of them by weaponizing money. My lawyer didn't flinch. She waited until Claire was finished, then handed over a printed chain of emails between Claire and Andrew, the same ones I had found in the folder, the ones where they talked about keeping up the Broke Act and how I'd cave soon. The moment the judge began reading, everything changed. He looked up and asked Claire directly why she continued to send money and coordinate with Andrew if she truly believed the loan agreement was invalid. Claire didn't have a good answer. She shifted in her seat and said, "I didn't think it would go this far." Andrew didn't stay quiet. He suddenly blurted out, "It was all Claire's idea anyway." The judge raised an eyebrow. Claire turned to him, glared, and hissed something under her breath. The court reporter didn't catch it, but I saw the look on her face, the same look she used to give when someone disagreed with her at a dinner table. The judge called for a pause in the proceedings. He requested that all written communications between all parties be submitted formally before any ruling would be made. The case wasn't dismissed. It was postponed for review. Outside the courthouse, I was making my way to the parking lot when Claire followed me. She was furious, accused me of humiliating her in front of a judge. I didn't engage. I told her she humiliated herself by taking the stand for someone who stole from both of us. I turned away without another word. Later that night, I received an email from Claire's legal team. They said they wanted to remind me of the emotional toll the situation was having on all parties and asked if I would consider mediation instead of continuing the case. I forwarded the email to my lawyer without responding. That same week, we attempted to serve Andrew with a second motion for damages, but the address on file, his last known residence, was empty. Neighbors said he'd moved out a few days earlier. No forwarding address, no updated contact info. He was gone. We filed a contempt of court motion. My lawyer explained that skipping town in the middle of an active legal case wouldn't play well in front of a judge. While that was in motion, I also began the final stage of asset separation in the divorce. The house was now under a legal freeze, pending division. The accounts were split, shared insurance was canceled, Claire's access to anything under my name was removed. I submitted a request for a full financial disclosure from her side, and my attorney sent notices to secure every record connected to our 10-year marriage. Whatever Clare and Andrew planned, it was coming apart. I wasn't chasing anyone anymore. I was documenting everything, closing every gap, and pushing the process forward, one paper at a time. A few days after court, my lawyer received official notice from the judge's office. A formal investigation was being opened into the validity of Clare's testimony and Andrew's financial dealings. The submitted emails, text logs, and contradictions between Clare and Andrew's statements were enough to raise legal concerns beyond just the small claims dispute. That same week, Clare returned to the house one final time to collect the rest of her things. She didn't speak much. Her father came with her, but he didn't look at me once. They went room to room in silence, loading boxes into his car. I didn't offer help. I didn't follow them. Once they were gone, I changed every lock in the house. I sent confirmation of access termination to my lawyer and locked down the remaining financial accounts permanently. 2 days later, while cleaning out the basement, I came across a dusty plastic tub wedged behind a shelf. Inside was an old external hard drive, one I hadn't seen in years. I remembered Andrew leaving it behind during the time he crashed at our place while building his startup. I stared at it for a few minutes before plugging it in. Most of the files were disorganized messes, half-finished business plans, poor budget mock-ups, graphic templates with fake logos. None of it mentioned my loan. I scrolled through folder after folder until I found one labeled pitch material. Inside was a Word document with no title and an audio recording labeled Mixdown 1. When I hit play, I heard Andrew's voice first, then Claire's. The conversation wasn't edited, no music, no cuts, just the two of them laughing quietly and rehearsing how they'd convince me to loan the money. Claire's voice came through clearly. Just sign whatever he wants. It'll make it look official, but we know it's not real. The document outlined, step by step, how Andrew would approach me for the money. It even had cues for Claire, when she would casually bring it up, how she would frame it as temporary help, and how to play off my doubts as overthinking things. There was a line that read, "Let him feel in control by signing paperwork. It'll calm him down." I sent the file straight to my lawyer. Within the hour, she replied, "This changes everything." We filed a motion to reopen the financial dispute, this time adding charges of conspiracy and fraud against both Clare and Andrew. Attached were the documents, emails, and the full transcript of the audio recording. Claire's new lawyer responded fast with a cease and desist letter, accusing me of spying and illegally collecting private communications. My lawyer replied that the drive was located on my property, left behind voluntarily, and belonged to me. The letter had no standing. Days later, Claire's lawyer withdrew the complaint entirely. Then came the offer. Claire's team proposed a settlement. She would waive all claims to spousal support, give up her share of the remaining joint savings, and remove her name from the house title if I agreed not to pursue the fraud charge. I declined. I wanted the court record to reflect what actually happened. I didn't want a quiet trade. I wanted accountability. Andrew vanished again. Court servers couldn't find him at any known address. The motion to hold him in contempt was filed and accepted, and a judge ordered a warrant for his appearance. Meanwhile, Claire's legal team sent another message, this time practically begging for mediation. I agreed, but only under the condition that it be recorded, and that Clare speak under oath. The mediation took place in a neutral office space downtown. Clare arrived, wearing the same expression she'd worn in court, tight-lipped, tired, but still guarded. The session was recorded from start to finish. Under pressure, Clare admitted what I already knew. She and Andrew had discussed how to manipulate me into giving the money. She said they knew I would never agree if they were honest. When I asked her why she didn't just ask me for help the right way, her reply was quiet, "Because I knew you'd say no." A few weeks later, the judge issued the final ruling. Andrew was ordered to repay the full $10,000 with interest and legal fees. Clare was ordered to reimburse half the $4,000 she withdrew from our joint account without consent. The fraud motion was upheld in the record, even if Andrew wasn't present. Our divorce was finalized shortly after. Clare received no spousal support, no share in the house, no access to my retirement or benefits. My lawyer filed the final property division paperwork, and everything we had once built together was legally untied. I spent the next few weeks repainting the house. Claire's favorite accent wall in the dining room became slate gray. I boxed up every photo and decoration she left behind and donated most of it. I replaced the furniture in the guest room Andrew used to sleep in and rekeyed the back gate, just in case. One afternoon, I opened the mailbox and found one last letter, no return address, handwriting I recognized immediately. It was from Andrew. The only words I read before tearing it up were, "Enjoy your empty house, traitor." I didn't finish the rest. Claire and Andrew are both permanently blocked, phone numbers, emails, social media, gone. They are also legally restricted from contacting me through any channel. I now attend weekly therapy sessions, not to grieve the loss of marriage, but to understand how I lived beside someone for nearly a decade without realizing how easily they could lie. Last night, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine. The air was quiet, the lights in the backyard flicked on with no one to disturb them. For the first time in years, no one was trying to borrow, trick, or guilt me into anything. My brother-in-law betrayed me, my wife helped him do it, and now they are exactly where they belong, out of my life, far away from the man they never expected would fight.